you all. So thanks for taking your time to come out, enjoy lunch, and hear from two of our students and your peers about what they are working on in their research. This is our 42nd Books and Bagels program. It will be my last here as part of the Office of Graduate Studies. So thank you all for coming out and supporting this program while I've been helping out. So hopefully it will continue to occur monthly and hosted by the Office of Grad Studies and the GSA. Our moderator for today is Dr. Penny Hammrich. Dr. Hammrich is a professor in the School of Education, and she specializes in science education. She's also the director of the doctoral programs in the School of Education. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about what she does when she comes up. And then we have two student speakers today, followed by a question and answer. So if you can, hold your questions and comments till the very end, and we'll bring our speakers up. If you have any questions at the end, let me know. We do have some more Books and Bagels mugs available if you do not have one already to take on your way out, and help yourself to lunch until it's done. And we'll welcome Dr. Hammrich.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today to introduce our two speakers and to enjoy some nice food. That was a nice benefit. As was said, I'm a professor in the School of Education here at Drexel University, and also the director of the doctoral program. So that would be we have a PhD program and an EDD program. And my area of specialty is science education, so that's the area that I do research. Prior to being at Drexel, I was the dean of the School of Education at Queens College at the University of New York. And then before that, I was an associate dean for research and a professor at Temple University. So I've been in many places. So I'm happy to present our first presenter today. Mamta Shah is a doctoral candidate in Educational Leadership and Development and Learning Technologies program at Drexel University, specializing in learning technologies. Ms. Shah's professional work focuses on developing and assessing in-service and pre-service teacher knowledge and adopting digital technologies through situating professional development in online and face-to-face settings. She concentrates on the integration of emerging and interdisciplinary digital technologies, such as games, in educational settings, using an ecological approach. She teaches and conducts research that investigates learning in interactive digital environments for developing interdisciplinary knowledge, motivation to learn, and creativity skills for the 21st century, in formal and informal learning contexts. Mamta is the 2015 recipient of the Anne Marie Whale Award for Excellence and Achievement in the PhD program in the School of Education. So, with that being said, Mamta?
Thank you all for coming, and thank you for inviting me to the Books and Bagels session. Before I start, I just want to get sort of an idea of who the audience is. So how many of you are master's students? Okay. Undergraduate students? Okay, so 1, 2, 3. And the rest of them are doctoral students, I guess? Okay. And what are some of the schools or colleges that you represent? Engineering. Okay. So we have a mixed group here. All right. I just wanted to get an idea of my audience. So once again, thank you for inviting me for this session. It's a pleasure to speak about my book. And I took this invitation as a sort of opportunity to reflect on my experiences here at Drexel and how they've impacted the multiple disciplines that I've fortunately learned about and work in. So as Dr. Hammrich just said, I'm a PhD candidate in Leadership Development and Learning Technologies program, and I mainly focus on learning technology. So being a student of learning technologies, I'm always looking at how new media affords ways in which we represent our lives and our evolving identities. And most of you are familiar with the Facebook timeline and Instagram as to how it affords us to represent our lives. So the way I structured this conversation was to sort of bracket the key years in my life and how they shape my emerging scholarship. So you see there's no 2013 here. I took a break between in the academic year 2013 2014. I had a baby then. So I moved to the United States in 2008, and I have a bachelor's and master's in human development. And since 2009, I've been enrolled at Drexel in the PhD program. So I've been able to use a lot from my bachelor's and my master's program to what I do at Drexel. I think this conversation is incomplete without acknowledging the tremendous guidance that I've received from my advisor, Dr. Foster. He's the professor that I've mainly worked with in my PhD program. And I think over the 5 years, I've been able to focus on 3 big themes, which can be sort of looked up as shifts in educational goals and how we address them through game-based learning. The first thing is how students learn. So we've focused on leveraging new media, interdisciplinary, immersive, interactive technologies, so that's digital games to impact how students learn. And if you're familiar with John Dewey, he said that all learners have the natural curiosity to inquire, to communicate, to construct, and to express. And by inquire, most of you are familiar with inquiry, is to problem solve, hypothesize, look for solutions, to communicate ideas, to express opinions, to defend ideas, to construct models of what they know, and to express one's values, opinions, and interests. So we've used game-based learning as a means to sort of help learners satisfy their natural curiosities. We've also focused on how teachers teach and assess student learning, in that we focused on providing them with tools and frameworks to analyze digital technologies, such as digital games, and to be able to identify the strengths and limitations of these technologies, and to work with them as pedagogical partners, in a way that they, using digital technologies, helps them complement their strengths and shortcomings. And the third thing is using sort of game-based learning and focusing on how new educational innovations are introduced and sustained. There's a long list of research that suggests that oftentimes so groundbreaking technologies enter schools and they never really get used to their best potential. And there's a similar case with digital game-based learning. So we're trying to focus on working with the different stakeholders in schools and make game-based learning, sort of introduce it not as a threat to existing practices, but to help teachers navigate the technology infrastructure, the social practices, the pedagogical practices, and help them realize that game-based learning can be a way to sort of enrich their existing practices. And when I talk about these shifts, so what is really the work, what is the work that has come out of these shifts? So I've been involved in teaching and research where we've developed and tested pedagogical models to integrate games in classrooms, because we realize that teachers do need systematic ways of integrating games in classrooms to go beyond using games for reinforcement or reward, but actually use games as a means to engage students' interests and motivation in learning something. Help them, provide them the tools to analyze games and identify the affordances and constraints for learning, because we all know that not only education games, but commercial games have a lot of opportunity for being used in classrooms. And there is tremendous scope for being able to repurpose these games if teachers have the right conceptual tools. And also another thing that we focus on is to use students' interests, prior knowledge, personal experiences, to design educational experiences that sort of help them bridge their personal and pedagogical knowledge, which we've come to know that does help them with exploring identities of what they may want to be or not become in the future. And although game-based learning receives a lot of attention recently, it's sad to see that teachers are one of the most underrepresented group in the field. So one of the other things my work is focused on is to develop teacher competence, both in service and pre-service, and to build assessments to assess their competence. And lastly, identifying the conditions that facilitate the adoption of game-based learning in different learning contexts. So I've been involved in projects that focus on integrated games both in museum settings, classrooms, and online settings. So the way I thought be relevant to talk about interdisciplinary research is I wanted to share that becoming an emerging scholar or a skilled scholar is more than just knowing the research or being involved in research activities. I think it's important to have a well-rounded experience in order to really contribute to a field. So from 2009, I've been involved in a lot of research, teaching, and service and publication activities. I've been involved in game-based learning projects where we supported teachers in middle and high school classrooms to help them help students learn in different STEM areas. My dissertation research itself focuses on the intersections of game-based learning and teacher education, and we're talking about it a little more further. And currently, I'm a research assistant in an NSF funded career project where we're investigating the process of identity change in games. I've been fortunate to serve both as a teaching assistant and an adjunct faculty in the Learning Technologies program, teacher education, and the global and international education programs, where I've had a good fortune to work with professionals from different fields, education and non-education, who wanted to learn about game-based learning, for instance, to augment what they already know in training and development. And I've learned a great deal from being involved in service and publication activities. I've presented at international conferences and been a reviewer for proposals. I also serve as an ad hoc reviewer for international journals and published manuscripts and book chapters. And I think all of that really has helped me get a good understanding of the different fields my work covers. So just to sort of add to my research and teaching and service activities, I've worked with pre-service and service teachers, K to adult learners, in K to 12 and higher education settings. The fields really span, but they're not limited to this: situated cognition, learning technologies, teacher education, and technology education. So, I thought it would be good to give a snapshot of my dissertation research. And I look at my dissertation research as a combination of all the research, teaching, and service activities because all of that led to what I really investigated as part of my dissertation research. I designed and taught a course for research teachers here at Janssen Pharmaceuticals program. It was a methods course where I helped 14 research teachers, both from graduate and undergraduate program, to learn about the methods involved in game-based learning, and specifically I focused on helping them learn how to analyze games, how to integrate games in classrooms, and how to sort of consider the different conditions that impact the use of games in classrooms. Just to give you a background of how I came to sort of decide on my dissertation research. So since my time at Drexel, I've been investigating the use of games in classrooms and K-12 education. And I don't really need to share statistics, but all of you may know that the use of games outside of school is way, way higher than what it is in classrooms. So I sort of probed further into that. Why is there such a big discrepancy? Particularly because there is so much research out there suggesting why use digital games. I mean, they embody good learning principles such as mastery development, adaptive feedback. They focus on different aspects of learning such as affective, social, cognitive, motivational. And there's a great deal of research also suggesting how game-based learning can really influence students' academic achievement and motivation. But yet, even though teachers are very interested and there's policy level sort of support in integrating games, still a lot of problems and gaps, and game-based learning still isn't really a mainstream aspect of schools. So once again, I probed a little bit into the problems and gaps, and starting from the technology integration literature. As Sandra experienced too, technology can always be challenging and messy. You really never know what can go wrong. It can be your best friend or it can give you a lot of trouble. And just the fact that it's available doesn't mean that it can be implemented effectively. And oftentimes schools sort of express hesitance in investing time and resources to learn how to implement technology. And oftentimes teachers are unclear about how to really manage the affordances of technology with their existing practices. Because just having something doesn't mean that you know how to use it properly. And then sort of narrowing down the search to gamification in classrooms. Although lots of teachers say that they're interested, the constricted time schedules, the bell schedules, student adjustment issues for the novel experience of using games in classrooms versus in informal settings, and the lack of systematic pedagogical models that help teachers align games with the curriculum and use games to accomplish their curricular goals, and also difficulties in identifying games that may be useful for them. So these were the issues. And then we developed this pedagogical model where, and we tested it in 2 schools in private and public settings, where we found that it did help sort of a synergy between teacher intervention and curricular inquiry and student engagement. And it did address gaps that have hindered game adoption or technology integration in classrooms. But that wasn't enough, because we realized that in-service teachers have these issues, and similar issues are experienced by pre-service teachers too. They want to use games, they consider using games, but they sort of lack opportunities to know which games to use, how to use games, and so we realized that it may be best to start off with educating pre-service teachers and sort of bridge the difficulties that both in-service and pre-service teachers experience. So starting really early starting early in technology integration has known to help teachers sort of adapt their beliefs and practices. So that's how really my dissertation topic emerged. And then it was interesting to see that when I collected background information from my participants, 0% had received any training in game-based learning. But 100% of them had expressed desire to be educated in game-based learning, and they had considered using game-based learning in their practice. This to me, I think, is both an opportunity and a challenge. A challenge because we have a population that's interested in using games because they see that how it engages students and how it could sort of strengthen their existing pedagogical and content practices. But they lack the opportunities to really know how to do it well. And I believe that if, not just my belief, but also research suggests that when teachers are not trained, they're bound to use any sort of technology ineffectively or through trial and error practices, which leads to a lot more frustration, and the technology ends up being unused, or teachers harbor exaggerated notions about it. So this was really good because it gave me a representative picture of where teachers sort of come, teachers in relation to games. And just to give a snapshot of what shifts happened in their ideas about game-based learning and their envisioned use of game-based learning in their future practice. So in the beginning, although they were very keen on using games, they still wanted to use it just for reinforcing concepts, or as a reward. And also, but towards the end, while they did have significant gains, knowledge gains in how to analyze games, how to use them to design game-based learning lessons, and also consider the conditions, they still were unsure about whether they would use games in classrooms. I think that's a very realistic picture because I didn't expect them to be fully competent in being able to use games. I think this requires a lot more work. This was probably just a foundation, so laying the grounds for that teacher education and game-based learning is really important. And having knowledge gains was just one step forward in making them feel confident that this is something that they could do if provided more guidance and more support. So I think the way forward for me is to sort of explore the similar themes that I've been looking at, how students learn, how teachers teach and assess with technologies such as games, and how educational innovations and games are introduced and sustained in classrooms. I think I'm going to continue focusing on these themes and look for more stories and sort of build this work that I've started, which I think is very important in the field of database learning has to advance in a more ecological fashion. So that's a little bit about my work, and I'm happy to take questions after these speaks. So thank you very much.
I can load it in if that's easier too. Whichever.
I have about one of them.
I don't think so. Unless you have any elaborate, let's see. Just use it for- all right.
Thank you, Mamta, for your presentation. That was very informative. And as Mamta said, we will take questions from either presenter at the end. Our next presenter is Timothy Schultz. He is a doctoral candidate in the College of Computer Informatics, Information Studies. Timothy was recently selected for an iFellows Doctoral Fellowship Program, a $50,000 award over 2 years given to iSchool doctoral students to pursue independent dissertation research that supports the goals of the Coherence at Scale program. His proposal, titled Visualizing Clinical Trial Design Trends by Mapping the Alzheimer's Disease Trial Space, was one of five to receive the fellowship from a pool submitted from 59 high schools across the world. The proposal describes data collection and tracking methods with the ultimate goal of providing researchers better understandings of the historical evolution of complex therapeutic spaces, such as Alzheimer's disease, and where promising treatment approaches may exist. Schultz's research interests include developing data mining tools, visualizations, methodologies for translational research, particularly with the Alzheimer's disease therapeutic area, and for accelerating the discovery and subsequent application of the novel scientific findings for the pharmaceutical research. Timothy.
So I'm Timothy Schultz, and first I just want to thank you for inviting me here to come speak to everyone today about my research. So just a little bit of my background. As it's been stated, I'm a PhD candidate here with Drexel CCI in the Institute for Healthcare Informatics. I'm also a research fellow now for Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. That's the iFellows fellowship with the Coherent Scale project, which is basically a collection of various open data initiatives that you basically look to align your thesis work with and propose how it aligns with that work. I also work for Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which is a company of Johnson & Johnson, where I'm an informaticist with the neuroscience group, and a team called Integrated Solutions. And basically what we do is we provide informatics capabilities to the clinicians, to the researchers, and answer very complex questions about how we go about finding the right patients for the right clinical trials, and how we enroll them. So a lot of questions around that. And I came into J&J through the Information Technology Leadership Development Program. And kind of bridging these two roles together, I get to do research, the actual research on one side at J&J, and bring those research problems over to Drexel and do more of a meta research view of what's driving the research, what are the actual challenges, and how are we actually addressing them. So this is what I want to accomplish today. I just want to give you a quick overview of the current AD research challenges, specifically with clinical trial design, and establish a need, as I said, for a meta informatics tool that kind of elaborates on what have we done in the past and where are we currently going with this research. And then provide a very brief snapshot of my doctoral research, a very shallow technical dive, if you will, and envision future directions as to where I see it going. So I heard a few biology folks over here. This might be a little bit of a review for you, but I will say that systems biologists right now are very, very hot commodity in J&J, and I'll explain why. So this is basically what we call a disease cascade, a set of pathophysiological events that occur, leading from amyloid accumulation. So these thick, sticky plaques start building in the brain, which lead to neuronal death. Then you start seeing changes in brain morphology. Regions of the brain, such as the hippocampus, start showing signs of atrophy. And then that's where you start seeing changes in cognition. Memory starts to go. Finally ending with functional deficits, how you actually are able to carry on in the real world. Are you able to make a cup of tea? Are you able to make your way around around the town that you're familiar with? So traditionally, when we're trying to treat a patient, we say, well, they're showing signs of cognitive loss, and we enroll them in a clinical trial. But this takes years. This is a very insidious disease. This takes years and years to actually develop. So maybe all the way. So this is downstream. This is upstream. Upstream may take 5-10 years to actually occur. So when you're here, the disease has already caused damage for say 10 years. And the thinking now is that maybe it may already be too late to actually start treating people. We need to start treating people here. And there's also questions as to what's actually happening even further upstream. There's a lot of research going into that. What causes this amyloid to accumulate in the first place? So again, a clinical trial, we basically try to find the right patients for the right trial that are exhibiting symptoms without comorbidities that would confound a treatment signal, such as depression. So what people have done in the past, they've broken up the groups into say, these people are cognitively normal, these people have mild cognitive impairment, and these people have Alzheimer's disease. And they found that since the disease is such a very long and insidious disease, that breaking these populations, the variability is still very high that you can't find treatment signals in this data. So they keep saying, well, we'll break it down a little bit more. They have no pathology, or they do have pathology if they're cognitively normal, or mild cognitive impairment, they have an amnestic MCI, or multiple domains on a scale of amnestic MCI. And then we break down Alzheimer's disease into mild, moderate, or severe. And we keep breaking these down, we keep binning subjects into these bins to the point where they get so very fine-grained that we're looking at, we're limiting our populations down to a very small size. And across all that is looking at the biggest risk factor today that we know of is the ApoE E4 allele, whether they're positive or negative for that. If you're positive, you have a significant chance of developing the disease much earlier on in your lifetime. And then the question is, how do we actually conceptualize and operationalize what memory actually is? Well, this is one example of the ADAS-COG-11 scale, which has 3 components: memory and learning, language, and praxis, which means how you go about planning to actually execute on some very simple task. So, for example, I think they give them a piece of paper and an envelope and say, can you fold the paper, put in the envelope, put a stamp on it, mail it to yourself. That's an example of the praxis that they test on. And it's the number of mistakes that you actually make in the test that actually dictate your score. But it's a summation of all those things. But the disease, as I said, is very insidious, and it systematically works its way through the brain. So you may include a bunch of people who may be impacted on this first section, but none of the other scales at all. And the question is this the appropriate way of coming up with the actual cognitive scale that you want to use as an endpoint for a clinical trial to say, this drug, we gave these people a drug, and on this scale, they got better or they stabilized as compared to people that were on placebo. These are the questions that we're working on now. So I found this very recently. This is alzforum.org, and it's a calendar basically of different types of drugs, classes, and this is an amyloid clearance class, sorted in alphabetical order, and the year is in each column, and it shows you where each drug is in each phase and when it started. At the very least, it would be interesting if you could actually sort by year and see that there's some sort of pattern that's happening as to this drug comes on and then someone follows it, and then another company throws their hat in the ring for a similar drug target. The question is, what's actually driving companies to find, to be interested in a certain drug target? And I will say there's a difference between a symptom masking drug, which basically just masks the symptoms of memory loss, and then there is a disease-altering type of drug, which we have not yet discovered, that will actually modify the trajectory of the disease itself. But what's really going on here is what's causing all these different clinical trials to occur at certain dates. So we have, for example, the literature as an influencer, key opinion leaders, and even dogma is things that people have just not questioned in the past, things that people still believe to hold true, that they use as certain design components in the clinical trial. And then how does this all affect prospective patient populations? So we want the right patient to get the right drug at the right time and the right dose. So this is just a very high-level sort of timeline as to when key events actually occurred that sort of influenced this dissertation topic. And as you can see, in 1902, AD pathology was first, 1906, AD pathology was first identified in patients. 1951, acetylcholinesterase inhibiting properties of galantamine was tested. Now we're all the way up to 2015, and we're still looking for an actual cure. But in the middle, we have a lot of these open data initiatives ongoing, such as the Alzheimer's disease neuroimaging initiative, which partially started over here at Penn. It's a multi-site longitudinal study of trying to track patients who are cognitively normal, MCI and AD, and get a better understanding as to, from a longitudinal standpoint, how the disease actually sort of manifests and progresses over time. And another one, the clinicaltrials.gov is somewhat maligned right now, but it was made mandatory that you have to file, 2005, you have to file your clinical trial with the website in order to actually publish it, your results in the future. And then in 2008, they introduced a results field to there. And then even more recently, the White House has introduced what they call a big data initiative, where 3 pharmaceutical companies have pledged to further extend clinicaltrials.gov to make it more useful instead of just a plain text search and retrieval site. So this research right now is very timely. So the question is, can clinical trial protocols be mined for key temporal themes? And then do patient populations change over time, and how do they change? How are these design considerations impact patients that can actually enter these clinical trials? So over on the right is a snippet of an example clinical trial protocol, and the orange highlights show different zones within that clinical trial trial protocol. So you have a detailed description, inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, and in green are the concepts that actually are mentioned within those actual zones. So traditionally, what's been done is in like a vector model, each document is expressed as an array of words. You know, 1 if the word occurs in that document, or 0 if it doesn't. But what we're doing is saying a clinical trial that is about heart disease is much different than a clinical trial that excludes heart disease. So we're actually taking zone information and weighing it and seeing where these terms actually co-occur with each other within these different fields. So basically what this program that we have, that we wrote, is takes input that any concept, it could be a gene network, it could be a clinical trial protocol, and puts and converts it into a series of statements. We're saying clinical trial 1 describes, and then some concept, monoclonal antibody. Clinical trial 1 describes beta amyloid, and so on. So monoclonal antibody and beta amyloid co-occur within that, within the context of that document. And what it ends up looking like is this. We have created a massive graph of clinical trials and the concepts that actually connect them within different facets of the clinical trial itself. This is a bit hard to see right now, but we use a technology, a distributed technology called Titan, which allows us to store millions and millions of nodes across a cluster of computers, and allows us to run queries on that. And what we can do is actually take a lot of these clinical trials here. So the pink nodes over here are showing that there's certain concepts connecting all the clinical trials together. And what we can do is show that through certain latent thematic dimensionality reduction techniques, find what the overall arching themes are within those clinical trials based on the connections of the terms that co-occur within that. So this is a dendrogram, and each row and column is a clinical trial. And the color shows how similar those clinical trials are to each other. And you can see clusters or high-level themes actually start occurring. So we can actually say with, that this clinical trial is connected to this clinical trial. It shares some sort of similar properties and give it a weight as to how similar they are. But that's really not, we're not really done yet. What we need to do is establish some sort of temporal connection between them and say, well, where are the major influencers over time? So this is if you haven't heard of this application, it's called CiteSpace. It's written by my advisor, Chao-Mei Chen. It's more for Co-Citation Networks, so you can pull in a lot of information about publications and see where the connections are actually occurring within different thematic topics. And what I did is actually, clinical trials are not explicitly saying we cited this design principle from this clinical trial. So you try to find connections of how similar they are together and create a graph. Over here, blue is a much earlier time period. So 2000, I believe, is blue. To red is in 2012, and you can actually see over here that's moderate Alzheimer's disease, and that cluster actually shows that that is the type of patient population at that point that was the most salient in that group. But as we go later on, we see that we're shifting to early Alzheimer's disease now. So we can see that from a high-level thematic standpoint, but we have to show that from a patient population standpoint. And what we plan to do is actually conceptualize this kind of tangled graph into what's called metro maps of science. So hubs and nodes and junctions as to each station is like a theme almost over time, and where themes sort of merge together is where things have happened where we've taken some new information from different thoughts and kind of merged them together to come up with a brand new idea. And for the patients, then think of each stop as a place where certain patients get on. They're allowed to. They are they are allowed to get on at a certain station because they are applicable for that patient population. And we're using the Alzheimer's disease neuroimaging initiative data, which is, again, the longitudinal data set, to find which patients basically would be allowed on each stop, where are these patients going, and finding over time our inclusion and exclusion criteria is becoming more strict or more lenient? Are they shifting to different patient populations? So where are these design patterns changing over time? And again, that's coming from ADME. And this is about where we are right now with the research. But we'll end it here. And this is my, just end it with, this is my committee. John Wayne Chen is my advisor with Drexel CCI. So, and thank you for allowing me to come in here and speak.
I really enjoyed the presentation. I forgot to say at the beginning, I'm a science educator, but I'm a geneticist, so I really enjoyed it. So we had two really great, wonderful presentations, and before I open it up to questions of either one of our presenters, if any of you got these little cards, what do you call them? Trading cards. If you look on the back, I was asked to provide a quote, kind of symbolizing interdisciplinary research. And I'm just going to read it to you because I don't think all of you have it. But I think, without knowing it, it kind of captures what the two presenters presented today in their own discipline. So here it goes. As the pace of scientific discovery and innovation accelerates, there is an urgent cultural need to reflect thoughtfully about these epic changes and challenges. The challenges of the 21st century require new interdisciplinary collaborations which place questions of meaning and of values on the agenda. We need to put questions about the universe and the universal back at the heart of the university community by Lydia Gracie. So to me what that says is you guys are really looking at unique and collaborative ways and what's going on in your discipline and looking for solutions and answers. And you're looking at it in a universal way. So that made an impact on me. So what we're going to do, we have about 7 minutes left. So we're going to open it up to our two presenters. Feel free to ask either one of them a question. Anybody have a question they'd like to start? Yes.
I have a question to...
Do you guys want to go up front?
Yeah. Why don't you come up here?
So I have a question to him. So how you ensure, I mean, patient selection, is it pure arbitrary or...
On what?
Arbitrarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a good question. What people tend to do is, the scale that I showed you, the ADIS cog.
It's very complex. I mean, the selection should be very complex, isn't it?
It is, but the theory is that there are reasons why people put those items into the inclusion and exclusion criteria. You're trying to find the most ideal patients without any comorbidities that would be most representative, of the target population that you intend to give this drug. So arbitrarily, there are some concepts that people add, as I said, that are somewhat dogmatic in nature, that people have, over the years have just come to accept that, well, this is what we've done in the past, so we're just going to keep doing that. But the reason why I did this is to say that there is a reason there are some sort of temporal connections between these ideas, and there is a reason why people are putting these certain items, these concepts into the inclusion and exclusion criteria.
Feel free.
I have one. I have one for Mamta. Kind of during your presentation, I thought about also in education how the hot button issue right now is standardized testing, standardized assessment. I'm just curious if you think that that's something that a game or a system could help contribute to more standardized testing? Do you think technology is a big part of that? Do you think that gaming would be a better way of assessing or analyzing students' skills and how they've learned a certain topic?
Absolutely. That's a very important question. I think standardized testing and teaching to test probably is one of the issues that a lot of teachers experience, and so that is one of the barriers that they experience when they have to try something new, such as game-based learning as an instructional approach. I think researchers in the field have already started addressing, because standardized testing, I'm not the best person to speak on it because I don't have the experience, but it has its own value and it has its own issues. But I think the way researchers have started addressing it is that try to build games and test them based on the standards that students are being tested for. Also, look at the ways in which student learning can be assessed